Welcome back to Sunlit Brushstrokes. I'm so glad to have you here for part 3 of our watercolor tulip piece, where we'll be adding our leaves. We will build up our layers from light green to deep, rich greens and even purples. Let's go ahead and get started. So for our leaves, we're going to want a nice green color. So I'm just grabbing some yellow to start with. The paint is, let's just do it over here. And then I'll go ahead and add a bit of blue, and I'll probably end up dragging that into the purple a little bit too, but let's see what color we can get. Yeah, that's very vibrant, so let's just go ahead and drag a little bit of purple into the mixture. I'm wanting kind of just a really light olive green. We're getting there. I think more blue, and we'll see. Ooh, okay. Forewarning, phthalo blue is very intense. It doesn't take much. That's okay. I don't mind having this as a dark green. So I'm just going to go ahead, drag more purple into the dark green. And we're going to have our dark green here. And then I'm going to go ahead and make a lighter green. Maybe we'll do it over here on the other side here. It's fine if they touch, but hey, why not have two going? This, not quite happy with it yet. Give it some more water, some more purple, and then some more yellow. I tend to like really muted greens. If you happen to like intense greens, you can take some artistic license and do the greens that make you happy. I know, I'm making a mess of my yellow. I do this all the time. You could use a clean brush every time you dip into that. Okay. Yeah, I don't mind that as one of my greens. I think I want a lighter green and maybe even one green that's darker. So let's go ahead and wash my brush and try and grab a pile more yellow, and I'm gonna do a lighter color here just so you guys can see it hopefully clearly enough, and we'll get a darker green going. It wouldn't matter if I totally lost my purple. I can make more if I need some, but okay, let's go and get some of this blue. I'm gonna just do this because I think I've got too much. Yes, it doesn't take much. Okay, that's a little on the vibrant side, so I can grab the purple, or I can just come in here and grab a teeny bit of red and dull it. You need to dull it down a little more yet. Like I say, I'm into the more muted greens, but I think I'm happier with that. Sometimes I'll have to, let's go ahead and test on a scrap of paper, because sometimes it's hard to tell just on the palette. So let's grab this one that we have our little sample on. Oh, I've got some green on there from another time. I like those greens. Okay, I think that might even be okay to have a nice bright green like that for this particular tulip. Try and ignore these. These are not the greens that I've got going. Sometimes I surprise myself. I was like, oh, there's green there. Yeah, actually, I'm not minding the greens I have. I probably do want one that's even darker still. So I'm gonna go ahead and just do that down here. Grab some blue. Typically, the better thing is to start with your lighter color and then mix the darker color into it. But because I'm doing a darker green, I'm probably okay with the amount of blue I have here. And definitely red. Red is the color that will mute our greens because it's on the opposite side of the color wheel. And if you're trying to avoid mud, you don't want to use colors on the opposite side of the color wheel. But if you're trying to create something that's a little on the muddy side intentionally, that's where you're going to do that. Cross the color wheel for your color mixing. That's a complicated thing I shouldn't say complicated. Something we can talk about another day. My favorite thing is to coach people through color mixing when it's like a one-on-one lesson, because then we can actually go, okay, what color's on your palette? Well, let's discuss which color needs to get added to get the color we're after. So I don't know, I think that part's kind of fun. It's one of my favorite parts of teaching one-on-one lessons. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. I'll definitely want some more muted colors coming, because I'm like, I even like a little bit of like pink and purple right in my final washes, but let's start with these. So wash my brush again. And I have a couple of options. What I could go ahead and do is just get green, this light green on everything, and I might even do that this time. So I might throw a little bit of water just to kind of help. Sorry, move this thing out of the way a little bit. Well, where can I put it? There we go. I'm going to go ahead and just add a little bit of water to the leaves, not too much, just so that things will move around a little bit for me. I could just go ahead and paint straight paint, but I think this paint is fairly intense, so that's why I'm adding a little water, just so that I have a little bit of the paint will move, and in some areas it'll be a little lighter. So let's go ahead and just paint these leaves just solid green, like we were painting in a coloring book when we were children. Again, I'm going to use using the tip of my brush as I come, like kind of with a very, very light pressure. If you're using heavy pressure, you'll have a hard time getting these tiny little sharp edges at the end of your leaves. So just try and work lighter pressure. If you have to hold further back on the brush, whatever you got to do to give yourself that control to get light pressure. Okay, got a puddle there. I'm going to come clean it up in a minute. I'm just going to go ahead and just drop my greens everywhere. Now, if you had a really wet shape still on your flower, this is where you would want to make sure it's dry first, because well, sometimes it's fine to have it just run a little bit in there. You can do that on purpose, but you have to be aware that if your flower's wet, then this paint can run into it. So if you want that effect, go for it. I do that in my paintings on purpose. There's other times I just try and keep them sort of separate from each other. Just dried my brush a little bit so I can kind of come a little bit into that tiny shape we have here. This is a very intense green. It's very springy, but yes, in my opinion, it needs to get neutralized. It's too intense for me. Alrighty, it definitely needs some darks. This is just way too fluorescent almost. So I'm gonna go ahead and use these darker greens and drop them in there, and then I'll drop in some purple. So what I'm gonna do is I still have to create kind of the effect of depth in here too with my darks, but I'm just gonna go ahead and just drop some dark in here and then move it around. So I'm kind of messing around a little bit more than I'd like to. I've dropped a bit of the darker green into my light green, and I'm kind of thinking it's probably better to let it dry because I'm not 100% happy with it. What I'm going to do is also just soak up some of this green, because I'm like, you know what? This green just might end up too bright. So I'm going to just leave this as a base coat. You could even, if you wanted your base coat to only have this light green, just give the light green a base coat, or give the whole thing a base coat of light green. Let it be not as intense if you're not as big on intense greens. I'm going to try and lift. I'm just using my wet, thirsty brush to try and lift a little bit of it out, because I'm thinking, you know what, I'd rather start lighter. I can work my way into darker colors, but if I get too dark to start with, I might not be too happy. So we're just going to leave it like that, let it air dry, and then come back in and do some detail and create some depth. Okay, so I've let that dry, so it's completely dry, and I think I'm going to now work on each shape. Maybe I'll take this long, tall leaf first and do it, and then kind of work from there based on, again, what shapes touch, so that I don't get things too wet and flowing into each other. So I'm going to just put a little water now. So that's what I'm going to be doing, is just adding water to my shapes. So I'm kind of skipping. As you can see, okay, I'm not wetting this leaf and I'm not wetting this leaf. So I've kind of gone wet, skip, wet, skip, wet. And I probably need to add more water as I go as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and just focus on getting this, well, let's just get this shape right first. I'm gonna throw some darks at the base of it where it's touching in here. So this is kind of a, this green has definitely become a very dark, almost greenish blue now. And I like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just put that in there. Let's move it around a little bit with our damp brush. If you're able to achieve any texture, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. Sometimes I'm able to get a little bit of the look of the leaf veining or creasing, but not always. So just do what works. Sometimes I'll move my brush in that direction, and if it doesn't work out, that's okay. So I'm happy with that. I'll do the same thing in this shape. So I've got it wet. And if you're happy with how much green is there, leave it without adding any more green, and just come into your darkest kind of blue greens, which are down here, and throw in some of your bluey green. So I'm going to just touch it again. I'm putting it kind of where it's meeting the edges of the petals, and then again where it's meeting this leaf, because that's going to help push the petal or the leaf, sorry, back, kind of give the impression that it's behind, because this is behind. So by pushing those darks, it's going to give that impression. Now I'm going to use my wet brush and just drag it around a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go, whoops, and just re-wet this shape, because it's, the longer I wait between them, the higher the chances that it's dried. So you could just even wait and wet each shape as you come to it. Okay, just dropping that dark green in, and if you're able to create texture, go for it. If not, just get it dark. And again, I'm wanting to darken the edges that are closest to this, any of the leaves. This leaf, you can see I've gone a little darker here, and then I've allowed it to lighten off. I've gone darker underneath because it's creating a bit of a shadow, and then I've lightened off, and again I'm creating a bit of a dark edge right along here where it's meeting the petal, or not the petal, the leaf in front of it. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom, so just wetting it again, and I'm going to get a little more water there, and then we're going to darken where the edges meet, so right along here. I'll see if I can create a little bit of movement in my strokes here. Get some, I don't know if this is really veining as much as it is just the creases in the tulip leaves, but the veins would run that direction as well. So, all right. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I like how I was able to get a tiny bit of texture there. See if I can a little bit up here too. It's pretty wet. It's not liking that idea. Try and lift it a bit. We'll just call that good. If I keep messing at it, I'll overwork it. So now we can work on a shape that's not touching any of these shapes, which could count this one here. It's not touching. This one actually here isn't touching either. It's almost touching this one, but we might be able to do these two. Let's try this. So I'm going to go ahead, wet this one, and grab some dark green. I think I need to make more dark green. I just feel like it's getting kind of pastel looking here, so I might do that in a quick minute. I'll just try and do this shape since it's wet. There we go. A little bit more. Like I say, I think I need to make more because I feel like I'm not getting my colors deep enough. Yes, let's go ahead and make more paint. I'm okay with that shape. It's gonna be okay. I'm just gonna grab my brush and do a little bit of mixing. So let's grab yellow first. Starting to dry in my palette. This is this paint is the Van Gogh paint, and it tends to dry in your palette. If you're using M Gram, it's probably going to stay moist, and I personally like that. That's one thing I really like about the M Gram paint. However, it's quite expensive compared to the Van Gogh. So go with your budget is what I say. Go with your budget. Okay, that's getting better. I'm just pulling some of this. I kind of had a pool of like dark green that kind of came flying down here and mixed with the purple, but it's making a nice color. So this is really just a combination of my green and purple, and I'm getting a little bit of a nice neutral green here. And I do like that color, but I'm going to throw a tiny bit more blue in part of it because ooh, that's a lot of blue. I have areas where I'm wanting more blue, not that much blue though. So I'll add a little more purple to that. You can see I just kind of get all messy here. Kind of am coming out of the screen a little bit. So this one here is going to need more yellow. Just wash my brush quick. Throw a bit more yellow. I think we're going to lose our purple. That's okay. Let's just lose our purple. We can make more if we need to. We know what we're doing. There we go. I'm liking that color. Ooh, every time I touch that phthalo blue, I get almost too blue. But I've kind of got a blend here. This green here is, you can see, just a little bit more yellowy with the edge, and then this one here, it kind of keeps pooling to the base of my palette, but it's a nice dark green. So we'll go with those two. Ooh, now I'm just creating a little bit of a shower on my paint. Oh, I did that earlier too. Oh dear. If you ever get messes like that and you didn't catch them in time, you could probably wash it off with clean water. So we'll do that afterwards. Let's go ahead and work on this shape here. So just fill it with water and then go ahead and grab some of these dark greens. So I've got the kind of the more bluey green, and I'm going to just drag that. And again, because this is a long shape, hopefully I can create by kind of just moving my brush in the direction of the folds or the creases in the leaf. I keep going to call it petals. The leaves. You can kind of get the look of it being a tulip here. Okay. I'm messing up a little bit. As it dries, I'll try and get a little more texture because, as you can see, it's running around a little bit. This is a little bit persnickety, but I don't mind that. I'm going to go ahead, I think, and put a little bit more here. Create more of a shadow along this edge. And under here. Just drop it there. Okay, I think that's almost good for now. We're going to just let the paint do its thing. Let it dry. We can come back in afterwards and add any other details that we think are necessary. Yes, let's stop there. So we can go over here and touch one of these now because we can't work on here. It's all, everything's touching each other and it's too wet. So let's go ahead and work on maybe this one that's underneath. So we'll go ahead and wet again. And then I'll throw in some of this color here. Again, I'm going to come underneath, get myself a nice firm edge, nice hard edge happening, and then drag them kind of in this linear motion, just dabbing my brush off a little on paper towel so that I can remove some of the moisture. I think this is going to drag nicely. Let's try this. It's almost, yeah, that's actually working okay. I kind of crossed my line a little bit. That's okay. Let's just smooth that out. I'm kind of liking that. Kind of crossed that line more than I wanted to, but I do like that. I'm getting a little bit of texture. And I like how I've got that little highlight under there as well. So I think I'm going to leave that be. And now everything is, it seems to me, touching another shape that's wet. So that means we've got to get the hairdryer out again, which I know is annoying. Let me just fix this. It can be annoying, but that's either doing it that way or letting it air dry is the only way we can achieve this depth. So I'm going to grab the hairdryer and I will be back. All right, so we just have a couple more shapes to do with our dark green, and then we can, I think, throw a little bit of purple in here. So let's go in here. I'm just going to wet this one and throw a little bit of the dark green. I'm going to go darker at the end here, because let's just say that there's maybe, it's furthest away from the light. And then under here, we're going to get some shadows happening too, because the petal is casting a shadow onto the leaf. So we can do that, but we don't want to get too dark where we're meeting, like letting these two edges meet. I'm going to drag it around with some water, because if you get too dark there, we're going to lose that nice effect that the leaf is folded over. So try and keep that fairly light, and we'll see if we can get just a little bit more green in here further down. Again, I'm just trying to create the idea of movement and these little creases or veins in the leaf. Okay, I'm going to use a very damp, clean brush and just try and clean that a little bit. It's a little bit of a hard edge there. If you like it, you can leave it there. I'm going to soften it right here because it's just a little bit harsh. Okay, I'm going to move from there and do this stem here. Wet it. Get a little bit darkness under here, which is kind of where we've already darkened it. Maybe a little bit down the side here. And just a tiny bit. I'm thinking maybe at the bottom, it's going to take quite a bit. Yeah, let's get darker down there. I think it is the thing that's kind of the furthest back, so I guess we're going to have to get it dark. Just as it comes to a little point there. And then I'll just blend it around with some water. Very damp brush, but we're going to call that good. We'll come back in and throw a little bit of maybe a purple color later. Let's do our final one. So let's just wet this one. Oh no, that's not our final one. We have this one too. It needs just a tiny bit of something on it, but okay. Let's just very lightly work. I'm gonna dry my, okay. I'm drying my brush. This has got green, dark green on it, but I'm trying to dab some of the liquid out of it so that I'm working with a pretty dry brush that still has paint on it to kind of get ourselves a little bit, ooh, I dried it too much. I want a little bit of creasing and folding here, but not anything dramatic, because this one is, okay, it's in front of this one right here. We're going to get dark as we come to the top. It can be dark at the bottom too. And then I can darken it right in here. This one is a little awkward. It is behind this one still, so I guess I can go pretty dark right here. This little section is confusing because you're trying to create depth. We'll probably have to create the depth with like a purple here. Trying to create the depth, and we're starting to lose these shapes. They're blending together, so I'm definitely going to have to do something to darken one of them at the end. But let's do that. I don't want to keep going dark too far because I still want to keep this one pushed back. This one I'm going to have to, at the end, push it back further because it's very close to mingling with this one. We'll see. But this one section here gets a little bit special. Okay. I don't want to do too much to this piece up here. And as long as it's not touching your wet shape here, you should be able to add a little water. And I'm going to do very, very little detail on this one just to kind of push it behind the petals of the flower. And let's just drag that downwards. I don't want to overdo because this one is kind of, as far as placement compared to the other leaves, it is one of the front leaves. So even though I want to push it behind the petals a little, I want to keep it in the front of the other leaves. I could put a tiny bit maybe right along this edge, but very carefully, because like I say, I want to keep it. I almost could leave that shape alone if you wanted to. I felt like I needed to fuss at it, but it's a little bit touchy just because of where it is in comparison to these other ones. I'm just moving that paint around with my damp brush. I think I'm going to call that good for that. So with where I'm at now, I need to go ahead, dry it again, then I'll come in and just do some final details. Now you might like it just the way it is, and that's great. If you don't want to add any more details, it would be fine to stop now. I have a little thing for adding bits of purple into my leaves, or if my flower's pink, then I'll be throwing pink in there. So I'm going to do that. However, this is optional. So I'm going to go ahead. I have to make a little more purple because, as you can see, I've totally lost it. So I'm just scooping up some red here, and I'm going to throw a little bit of this blue in it, and just have a tiny little bit of purple for myself here. Won't need much. Go ahead, wash my brush, and I'm gonna just put water in a few spots. So I'll show you. I think I'm gonna put a little bit of water on this one. Now everything's dry, so putting a little water gently, and then I'm gonna just dab a little tiny bit of that purple, kind of at this edge, because I think it can kind of get that effect that maybe the purple almost like bloomed into your leaf here. So oops, it's going a little overboard. I'm gonna lift it. If you don't like the effect of the purple on top, skip it. I don't know, I like adding purple. Okay, I'm gonna do that to this shape here. So just wet it with some water, and let's just put a splash of purple in a few spots, just maybe like that. You can see it's just moving around really nice and softly. We'll throw a little bit up here. Might even put a little bit into the shadow here just to help push it back. Yes. So I'm putting more right there. I might even do that on this side. This side is still wet. Let's just push it with a little more purple. And then we'll just let those move around with our watery brush, kind of damp brush. That's helped. It's pushed this leaf back a little bit. I've got to be careful with this step because it's ooh, I just touched. Did a no. Try and clean this front petal up. I wasn't supposed to touch, or wasn't supposed to wet this yet. It's touching the one I just did. Don't do what I just did. Do what I say and not what I do. Leave this section of this leaf till later in the process. You want to have it dry first. Okay, I think I've managed to get it to be okay. It's bled in there a little bit, but it wasn't super wet, so I think I'm getting away with it. Okay, let's move into somewhere that's not touching anything we've just done. So let's move over here. I'll just give it a quick wet with some water. And throw some purple underneath here. And maybe a little bit at the base. And then I'll just move them around. So I'm just dabbing. I'm just going to dab my brush off a bit. This is still my painty brush, but just drag that around. And move this upwards a little bit. See if we can create any depth there. Okay, good enough for there. I'm going to just go ahead and put a little bit on here. And then I'm probably going to have to dry it again. Put a little under there. Like I say, this step is optional. I can't touch down there because we're touching. I'm going to go ahead, give it a quick dry, come back and add the last bit of purple. All right, I've dried it and I'm going to go ahead and just do the final leaves. So that would mean this one, and it is in front of this one, so I'm going to have to try and be kind of careful as I'm doing this. Ooh. There is so much paint here that it is lifting. That's even on Arch's paper, it's lifting. But I'm gonna just drop a tiny bit of purple maybe into this area more towards the side. Try and kind of keep it away from, where it's running now. Let's use a damp brush and just move it around a bit. Let's call that good enough. Don't want it to, put a little bit of it maybe here. There's definitely a lot of pigment on this particular leaf, so it's, like I say, I'm having a little bit of an issue with the paint lifting a bit for me. So I'm just very carefully coming in and just touching it, leaving it alone, because like I said, there's just so much paint it is lifting. Okay, that's good for that one. Let's go ahead and do a little bit to this one. I might even not bother with as much Let's put a little bit of the purple down at the base. Otherwise, just so that it harmonizes with everything else. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and maybe put a tiny bit of green in here because it's it is pushed back. Like it's, you can see it's separate from this one, but I feel like I could state that a little bit more boldly. So let's do that. Maybe a little bit of, I'm kind of mixing up my two brushes here. I think, well, maybe a tiny bit more green. Pretty dry, so I was able to get a little bit of texture happening. I'm happy with that. I'm not 100% dry, but drier than I had been. So I'm going to go ahead now and just work on the rest of this leaf one little section at a time. So some water, and then let's do some maybe dry green a little bit, and we can decide. I might even just skip the purple on this one. Just try and get a bit of texture there. I don't have very much water in this area, so I'm able to achieve a little more texture. And then up here, let's not skip the water, add just a little texture in here too. This one had a little bit of that purpley color in there. I'm going to throw just, no, let's not do it right now. I'll just add a little more dark green, and we're going to call that good for this one. You can always come back with the final layer if you do, in some of these shapes that I'm skipping the purple at the moment, you can always, ooh, that's too dark. You can always come in and add purple as a final layer if you feel like there's some shape that needs it. Let's try dragging that around with my damp brush. I'm not quite happy with what I'm doing here. I can always, when this is dry, try and clean that edge up, but let's just go ahead and, where else? I think this is maybe the last one we need to really do much to, I'm thinking. So just go wet it. Water. And then I think all I'm going to do with this one is add some purple, and I'm going to try and do it in such a way that I get a little bit of texture as I'm doing it. So make sure this is dry enough. The other thing you can do to just speed up the drying process is to just take your paper towel and just blot it very gently. It can help pull a bit of the water out. I'm going to do this, soak a little water out of my brush. Again, I'm kind of doing it at the ferrule because I want the paint still at the tip. Might even grab a bit more paint at the tip and get a little bit of this texture here. Okay, I almost dried out the water too much. That's okay. We're going to leave it like that for now. Don't mind that. No, I don't like that. Let's just use our wet brush and just soften it a bit. It's too stripy. There we go. That's better. Alrighty. I think that we're gonna call, oh no, I almost forgot. I need a tiny bit of purple down here. Just going ahead, I haven't pre-wet it. I'm just gonna drop some purple in there, and then I'll just drag the purple upwards a little bit with my damp brush. And then I'm gonna call that good. Yeah, a little bit along the edge because it's looking a little bit goofy. There we go. Because it's dry, I think I might add a little more texture into this one here, and I'm gonna just do wet on dry using my dark green, and then I'll wet my my shapes that I create using a damp brush. So I'm just getting some dark green on my brush, and I'm just gonna create, you know what, I think I wanted just a little bit more yellow in that green. I can grab some of the light green and mix it into our dark green. That'll do the trick. Dab my brush off a bit, and I'm just going to go ahead and create some of these lines here for texture, and then I'm going to, well, it's still wet, I'm going to come in here and move them around a little bit, just soften them with my damp brush. So I know this is a lot more texture than anywhere else. Use my wet brush and just pull that and just soften it. I even throw a bit more of my light green into that shape. I typically don't like working with my light green at the end, but that's okay. I'm getting borderline mud there, but I think I like that better. Maybe I'll go around and just do that in a few spots. Again, this is optional, but if you want a little bit more texture in a few areas, you can just do it dry and then just slightly dampen it. Anywhere else? I think I'm good now. Okay, let's go ahead and just clean that spot up. So we had that happen earlier, but I'll quickly remind you to take yourself a firmer cheap brush and get it nice and wet with water and kind of scrub it a little bit until you can pretty much get the shape off of there. I could even have a firmer brush than the one I have, but this is what I got with me right here. So I'll do that, and then I'll just grab a clean paper towel and just blot it. It's not 100% out, but it's better. Best option here would have been to have managed to catch this while it was still wet, as I did with that little splatter we got earlier. When all else fails, there's a couple of things I could do here. A firmer brush would be helpful as one option, and if that fails, the idea of doing watercolor splatters is another thought. That could take a little bit. That's a technique, though, I think I should show you guys another day. That would be really good for a future painting. And finally, when I put something like this on my Etsy shop, I would just clean this out digitally. And that's what I'm going to be doing for the image that I'll include in the download that I'm giving you the link for this video. Well, that brings us to the end of our watercolor tulip. I'm looking forward to doing the scripture lettering with you next time. And I'm so grateful that you joined me today. I hope this tutorial has brought a little taste of God's beauty and peace into your everyday life, that this will enhance your Easter celebration and has inspired you to enjoy your own creative journey. See you again soon. Bye.